I had just settled into my new home, a modest but peaceful ranch-style house nestled at the end of a cul-de-sac where city meets country. After years of working tech in San Jose, I had finally saved enough to move to a quieter town with open space, no traffic, and a promise of fewer daily annoyances. That's what I thought, at least. Then came Karen. She was the self-appointed energy efficiency queen of our HOA, blonde, sharply dressed, armed with a clipboard, and always concerned. She owned a brand-new Tesla Model X, which she proudly parked front and center in her driveway like a showroom piece. At first, I thought she was just enthusiastic about going green, but the truth was darker and sneakier. It started with small things. My garage lights flickered oddly every evening around the same time. I assumed it was a wiring issue or maybe a blown fuse. I called in an electrician who gave me the worst kind of diagnosis. Everything looked perfectly fine. Maybe a surge? Or someone's drawing load from your circuit, he said. Ever had a neighbor do something fishy? That made me pause. I decided to monitor my energy usage using a smart meter I had installed back when I worked for a renewable startup. Day by day, I noticed spikes around 7 p.m., right when Karen returned home and her Tesla would quietly hum to life with the telltale glow of charging lights. That's when it hit me. She was stealing electricity from my property. At first, I didn't want to believe it. I mean, who does that? But the numbers didn't lie. I began watching more carefully. One evening, while enjoying a beer on my porch, I saw an extension cord slithering out of my external outlet. It ran along the hedge line and disappeared into Karen's backyard. I followed it, quietly, carefully, and sure enough, it led straight to her garage, plugged into a Tesla charging port. My blood boiled. She had drilled a hole through her fence just wide enough to run the cord. Not only was she stealing power, but she had done it deliberately and covertly. She thought I wouldn't notice. The next day, I confronted her. I was calm, respectful. "Hey, Karen, I think there might be a mistake. I found an extension cord plugged into my outlet, running into your garage." She smiled the way people do when they're caught but think they can outmaneuver you. "Oh, that? Silly me? I thought that was community property. We all have to pitch in and help each other, right?" Her tone was syrupy sweet, but the message was condescending. "Besides," she added, "you barely use it and it's for a good cause, clean energy." I told her to disconnect immediately. She did, but not for long. That night, I unplugged the external socket entirely. Thought I'd beaten her. But the next day, I found that she had unscrewed my outlet plate and reconnected her cord directly to the wiring. That was the final straw. Gathered evidence, security cam footage, smart meter readings, screenshots of usage logs. I took it to the HOA board, but they brushed it off. "Karen is a founding member," one of them said. "She's probably just confused." I realized I was on my own. That's when I decided to hit her where it would hurt, figuratively and electrically. I reached out to an old friend from my engineering days, an expert in surge protection and energy load balancing. We devised a trap, a legal, harmless, but highly effective feedback surge rig that would trigger if someone bypassed the outlet and rerouted power without permission. It wouldn't electrocute anyone, just deliver a high-voltage spike back into whatever device was plugged into it, specifically a Tesla battery. I set it up and waited. The next evening, I watched as Karen crept into her yard and reconnected the cord yet again. She thought she was slick. Her Tesla blinked to life, charging status active. I smiled. 5 minutes later, the lights on her Tesla began to flicker. Then, boom! A loud pop echoed through the quiet neighborhood. Karen screamed. Smoke curled from her garage, and her Tesla's charging port sparked like a firecracker. I called 911, not for her sake, but to get everything documented. Fire trucks arrived. The damage was mostly electrical. Nothing caught fire, but the battery, fried. Total loss. And the best part? Everything I did was legal. When the fire inspector asked what happened, I showed him the footage, the altered outlet, and the HOA's previous dismissals. Karen had tampered with my property. She had committed energy theft. I wasn't responsible for her ignorance or the surge that hit her car. She tried to sue me, of course, claimed I sabotaged her. But my legal trap had documentation, safety, features, and proof of unauthorized access. The judge tossed it out and recommended she be fined. Now, the HOA had no choice but to take me seriously. But this was just the beginning. Karen had made a grave miscalculation, but she wasn't one to give up easily. Her smug smirk the morning after I caught her red-handed had vanished, replaced by a forced grin and a nervous twitch in her eye. I knew the confrontation wasn't over. It was only the beginning. But what she didn't know was that I had already started setting a trap so precise, so beautifully legal, that not even her expensive lawyer would be able to squirm her out of it. I had every reason to be fed up. My utility bills had nearly doubled in the last 3 months. I thought maybe I had a leaky water heater or my AC system was dying. But no. Karen, with her entitled attitude and a brand-new Tesla Model X she probably leased just to impress her other HOA cronies, had been sneaking over and using a covert extension cord in the dead of night to siphon electricity from my external garage outlet. I'd caught her once, but I needed more. I needed undeniable evidence. I had spent the last week installing a closed-circuit camera with night vision and a motion sensor alarm disguised inside an old birdhouse on the oak tree near my driveway. By the second night, I had exactly what I needed: crystal-clear footage of Karen sneaking onto my property, plugging in a heavy-duty extension cord, and powering her Tesla for hours at my expense. The next step? I wanted to go bigger. I wasn't going to just confront her and yell across the fence. I wanted this to sting. So I called my buddy Dave, an electrician and former Air Force technician, who owed me a favor. I explained the situation and my plan. "You want me to install a capacitor and a surge-triggering decoy outlet?" "Exactly," I said. Dave chuckled. "You realize if this backfires, she's going to cry foul, call the HOA, maybe even press charges. I've already got footage of her trespassing, stealing power, and lying about it in front of witnesses. If she pushes, I'll push harder." Dave came by that Friday night. We installed a custom rig, a dedicated decoy outlet that looked perfectly normal, except it was connected to a controlled surge circuit. It wouldn't kill anything, not permanently. But if anyone tried to draw a heavy load from it, like, say, a Tesla's charging cable, it would activate a timed power loop that fried the onboard charging system. It was perfectly legal. I owned the outlet, it was on my property, and she wasn't authorized to use it. In fact, her even touching it could be construed as theft and trespassing. We tested it using a simulated charger load. It tripped the surge trigger perfectly. The box smoked slightly, a harmless puff, and then reset. Flawless. Now all we had to do was wait. And oh boy, Karen did not disappoint. 3 nights later, 2:43 a.m., my phone pinged me awake. The sensor. Alert from the birdhouse cam flashed across my screen. I tapped into the live feed. There she was, Karen, wearing a hoodie over her head like that would somehow fool anyone, creeping across my driveway like a raccoon in pearls. She dragged the same thick orange extension cord she always used, uncoiled it, and plugged it in. 5, 4, 3, snap. A burst of light shot from the outlet. Karen jumped back, screamed, and dropped the cord. Smoke spiraled upward. Her Tesla let out a strange electronic chime, and then dead silence. She panicked, fumbling with her key. Fob. The car wouldn't respond. No lights, no locks, nothing. I stepped out onto the porch in my bathrobe, coffee mug in hand. "Problem with your battery, Karen?" I called out. "Might be a surge. Weird how that happens when you steal power." She turned, furious, eyes wide. "You did this on purpose. You sabotaged my car." "On my property?" I said with a shrug. "I was sleeping. You broke in again after I warned you. You'll be lucky I don't press charges." The next morning, the HOA president, Larry, came stomping up my walkway. "Now hold on, Greg. Karen says you sabotaged her vehicle with some kind of electrical trap. That's a serious accusation." I smiled and led him to my garage where I had a large TV hooked up to a DVR showing the exact footage from last night. Karen, clearly trespassing, clearly plugging in her charger, clearly not the victim. Larry watched in silence. He looked like someone had just dumped a bucket of cold water over his head. "Well, this is, oh, don't worry," I said. "I've already submitted copies of this to the sheriff's department just in case." Karen was silent for a few days after that. But the HOA, they weren't done. Apparently, the embarrassment wasn't enough to stop them from poking the bear. I received a letter claiming that my security system was a nuisance and needed to be removed. 2 days later, a citation appeared on my door claiming my electrical setup violated neighborhood standards. I had had enough. It was time to go nuclear, but legally. You see, what the HOA didn't know was that the boundaries of our properties were based on outdated documentation. When I bought my home, I acquired an extra 15 feet of land beyond what was visible, which included part of the public walkway and the space where Karen and others routinely parked their cars for HOA meetings. With the help of a land surveyor and a quiet filing at City Hall, I registered a minor boundary adjustment request under the local zoning ordinances. It was approved. I now legally owned the strip of land that included a portion of the HOA's sidewalk and the unofficial guest parking area. Then I put up a fence, not a tall, aggressive one, just a modest 3-foot white picket fence with a tasteful sign. That read, "Private property, no HOA access." Karen was the first to see it. She shrieked, "You can't block the walkway, that's for everyone." "No," I said, sipping lemonade. "It's not. This land was always part of my parcel. The city confirmed it. You've all been trespassing for years." That afternoon, I filed official trespassing notices against the HOA board, citing multiple incidents of illegal access to my property. Then I sent them a bill, $2,175 for unauthorized utility usage, parking violations, and damage to my lawn over the past 6 months. They laughed. Until they got a letter from my lawyer, and then, suddenly, they weren't laughing. Karen's Tesla was still in the shop. Word was the battery damage was extensive, and Tesla wasn't covering it. She tried to launch a lawsuit, but my camera, footage, the property boundaries, and her public tantrums made it an open and shut case. Her claim was thrown out before it even hit mediation. The rest of the neighborhood watched in awe. I wasn't just some quiet guy with a garage and a decent lawn. I was a planner, a tactician, a problem solver. And Karen? She moved out within 2 months. But the best part came weeks later. A new couple moved into her house. Sweet, quiet folks who brought cookies to the neighbors and asked politely if they could walk their dog past my yard. They even offered to install solar panels so they wouldn't burden the grid. I smiled. Peace had returned, but just in case. I kept the surge outlet armed.